Addiction comes in many forms: drugs, pornography, gaming, social media, and each has the power to take control of our lives. Among them, sex addiction is one of the most hidden yet deeply damaging struggles. It's not just about desire, it's about losing control, repeating harmful behaviors, and living with guilt and secrecy. But the good news is, recovery is possible. In this video, we'll talk about how individuals can break free from sex addiction by understanding their triggers, seeking the right therapy, building healthy coping strategies, and surrounding themselves with support. If you or someone you love is battling this challenge, remember, addiction does not define you. Recovery can lead you to a life of strength, purpose, and freedom. Acknowledgement and acceptance form the very foundation of recovery from sex addiction. Without this step, no treatment, therapy, or support system can truly succeed, because change always begins with the recognition of a problem. For many individuals struggling with sex addiction, denial is the strongest barrier. They may tell themselves that their behavior is normal, that everyone does it, or that it is just a temporary phase. Others may minimize the seriousness of the addiction by convincing themselves that it is only about pleasure and not harming anyone. But as doctors and mental health professionals emphasize, addiction is not measured by the act itself, but by the loss of control, the compulsive repetition, and the negative consequences it brings into a person's life. Acceptance means breaking through that wall of denial and being honest with oneself. It is about recognizing the harmful patterns, the secrecy, the guilt, and the way the addiction has taken over daily life. Many addicts continue for years because they cannot face the shame of admitting the problem, even to themselves. They fear judgment from others or believe that seeking help makes them weak. In reality, acknowledgement is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. It takes courage to look in the mirror and say, "I have a problem and I need help." That statement, simple yet powerful, is the beginning of healing. From a clinical perspective, acknowledgement is also important because it shifts the mindset from blame to responsibility. Instead of blaming external circumstances, stressful environments, or past trauma alone, the individual starts to understand that they have the power to make changes. This realization does not erase the pain or challenges, but it opens the door to active participation in recovery. Without acknowledgement, people often fall into a cycle of excuses and relapse, repeating the same behaviors while convincing themselves they are still in control. Acceptance also involves understanding that sex addiction is not a moral failing, but a medical and psychological issue. The brain's reward system becomes rewired, making compulsive sexual behavior difficult to stop without proper support. Once this is accepted, shame begins to lessen, because the problem is no longer seen as a defect of character, but as a condition that requires treatment, just like diabetes or hypertension. This shift in perspective makes it easier to seek help, whether from a doctor, therapist, or support group. For families and partners, acknowledgement is equally crucial. When the addicted individual admits the problem openly, it breaks the cycle of secrecy and allows loved ones to become part of the recovery journey. While trust may have been broken, honest acknowledgement demonstrates a willingness to change, which can be the first step in rebuilding relationships. In conclusion, acknowledgement and acceptance are not simply the first steps of recovery. They are the foundation upon which every other step is built. Without them, therapy feels forced, coping mechanisms fail, and support systems cannot function effectively. But with genuine acceptance, the individual moves from denial to determination, from shame to hope, and from secrecy to healing. It is the moment when recovery truly begins, and it gives the strength to continue the long but achievable journey toward freedom from sex addiction. Identifying triggers and underlying causes is one of the most important steps in recovering from sex addiction, because without understanding what drives the compulsive behavior, the cycle is likely to continue. Addiction rarely exists in isolation. It is usually a symptom of deeper emotional wounds, unhealed trauma, or unresolved psychological stress. For many people, the addiction becomes a way to cope with pain, loneliness, or feelings of inadequacy. The sexual behavior itself may provide temporary relief through dopamine release, but unless the root issues are recognized, the individual will continue to return to the same destructive patterns again and again. One common underlying cause is childhood trauma. Experiences of neglect, abuse, or lack of emotional support can leave long, lasting scars that manifest in adulthood as compulsive behaviors. Some individuals use sex as a way to fill the emotional void left by those early wounds. Others may have grown up in environments where intimacy and affection were absent, leading them to confuse sexual gratification with love and acceptance. Without identifying this link, the addiction is seen only as a bad habit rather than as a coping mechanism for unresolved pain. Stress and anxiety are also powerful triggers. In moments of overwhelming pressure, whether from work, studies, or personal struggles, individuals may turn to sexual behaviors as an escape. The instant release provides a distraction from their stress, but it also reinforces the habit of using sex as a coping tool. Over time, the brain learns to associate stress relief with compulsive sexual activity, making it very difficult to break free. Recognizing this connection allows the individual to work on healthier ways to manage stress, such as exercise, mindfulness, or therapy, rather than falling back on destructive behavior. Loneliness and isolation are another major cause. Human beings are wired for connection, and when that need is unmet, people often look for substitutes. Sex addiction can provide a false sense of intimacy, especially when it is linked to pornography, online chats, or casual encounters. These experiences mimic connection but ultimately deepen the loneliness. By identifying loneliness as a trigger, individuals can begin to focus on building meaningful relationships, developing social bonds, and seeking authentic companionship instead of artificial substitutes. It is also important to recognize situational triggers. Certain places, times, or even emotions can act as cues that push an individual toward addictive behavior. For example, being alone late at night with access to the internet may serve as a trigger. Arguments, boredom, or feelings of rejection can also push a person toward relapse. Part of the recovery process involves carefully mapping out these triggers and creating strategies to avoid or respond to them in healthier ways. Ultimately, identifying triggers and underlying causes gives individuals power over their addiction. It transforms recovery from a blind struggle into an intentional process. Instead of simply resisting urges, they can understand why those urges exist and address the real problem. By healing trauma, managing stress, reducing isolation, and restructuring their environments, individuals can gradually weaken the hold of addiction. Awareness brings choice, and choice creates freedom. This understanding is what allows long-term recovery to take root and grow into lasting change. Therapeutic interventions are at the heart of recovery from sex addiction because they provide structured, evidence-based methods to help individuals break free from compulsive behaviors. Unlike willpower alone, which often fails against the powerful grip of addiction, therapy gives people the tools to understand, manage, and rewire their thoughts and actions. The role of therapy is not to shame or judge, but to guide the individual toward insight and healthier coping strategies, while also addressing the psychological wounds that fuel the addiction. One of the most effective approaches is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. This method helps individuals recognize distorted patterns of thinking that justify or trigger addictive behavior. For example, an addict might think, "I deserve this because I'm stressed," or "it's not harming anyone if I keep it a secret." CBT works to challenge these beliefs and replace them with healthier, more rational thoughts. Over time, the person learns to break the automatic cycle of thought, urge, and action. This restructuring of the mind is crucial because addiction often thrives on unchallenged thinking patterns. Psychodynamic therapy also plays an important role, especially for individuals whose addiction is rooted in deep emotional wounds or past trauma. This therapy focuses on uncovering unresolved conflicts from childhood or earlier life experiences that may have created a dependence on sexual behavior as a coping mechanism. By bringing these issues into awareness, individuals gain the ability to process pain rather than suppress it with compulsive actions. Healing the root cause is often the key to breaking free from the surface behavior. Group therapy is another powerful intervention. Addiction often grows in secrecy and isolation, and many individuals feel they are battling it alone. Group therapy breaks this isolation by creating a safe space where people share their struggles and support each other. Hearing others' stories helps reduce shame, while accountability within the group provides motivation to stay committed to recovery. Programs such as Sex Addicts Anonymous follow a 12-step model, similar to those used for alcohol and drug addiction, and have shown strong results for many. In some cases, medication may be considered to help manage underlying mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, or obsessive-compulsive disorder, which often coexist with sex addiction. While medication does not cure the addiction itself, it can stabilize mood and reduce the intensity of urges, making it easier to focus on therapy. Doctors evaluate each case individually to ensure that treatment addresses both the addiction and any co-occurring conditions. Therapeutic interventions also involve building new life skills. Individuals learn strategies for emotional regulation, stress management, and developing healthy relationships. These skills replace the old reliance on addictive behavior. For example, mindfulness practices teach awareness of urges without acting on them, while lifestyle changes such as exercise or creative outlets provide alternative sources of satisfaction. In conclusion, therapeutic interventions give structure, insight, and accountability to the recovery process. They move individuals beyond mere resistance into genuine healing by addressing the thought patterns, emotional wounds, and environmental factors that fuel sex addiction. With the right therapeutic guidance, recovery is not only possible but sustainable, allowing individuals to reclaim control over their lives and build healthier, more fulfilling futures. Healthy coping mechanisms and lifestyle changes are essential for breaking free from sex addiction because they replace destructive patterns with constructive, life-affirming habits. Recovery is not just about saying no to addictive behaviors. It is about creating a new way of living where the individual learns to manage stress, emotions, and desires in healthier ways. When sex addiction is left unaddressed, it often thrives in moments of boredom, loneliness, or emotional pain. By adopting positive coping mechanisms, individuals give themselves alternative tools to face these challenges without falling back into compulsive actions. One of the most effective coping strategies is physical activity. Exercise not only improves physical health, but also releases endorphins, the body's natural feel-good chemicals. This creates a healthy source of pleasure and stress relief, which reduces the craving for addictive behaviors. Activities like running, swimming, or even yoga help regulate mood, boost self-esteem, and provide a sense of accomplishment, all of which are vital in maintaining long-term recovery. Mindfulness and meditation are equally powerful tools. Sex addiction